So 2021 has arrived, and what happens in the times of crisis, which we had in 2020, is that it doesn't really change things so much as it accelerates the trends that are already in motion. And boy, do we see the fruit of that as we're beginning this year of 2021, politically, socially, all these other things. But in this video, I want to unpack the three biggest lessons I've learned from what's happened in 2020 and how that can shape and form our strategy moving forward into 2021 and beyond that is coming up. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Multiplying Disciples channel. My name is Mark, and on this channel, we love to share with you strategies, tips, and real life examples of what it looks like to follow Jesus, follow the model of Jesus, and see disciples multiply disciples. And so if that content resonates with you, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and please share this content. All of that helps with the YouTube algorithm and getting this content out there. And more, I'm going to be posting links to other places where this content is listed as there is more and more censorship happening. You can check that out in the description below. So in this video, we're going to dive into continuing this multiplier series, and rather than continue on a specific theme or passage, I wanted to reflect on 2020, and I want to encourage you to do that as well. When it comes to the end of a year, my wife and I oftentimes will take time to go to a coffee shop. We take time every year somehow to get away and to process through the year and ask God to speak about the next year. And this year, as we did that, one of the things that God brought up in my heart is some of the trends that we saw in 2020 and the ways that we began to respond to that and some of the lessons that we learned from that. So I wanted to share that with you. And I could share probably 5 or 10 things, but for the sake of brevity and also to make this video super actionable, I want to boil it down to 3 things. So here we go. 3 things that I learned from 2020, trends that emerged from crises that have happened that you need to know about and that can shape how you make disciples and multiply disciples into 2021 and beyond. Number 1, Oikos. Oikos is king when it comes to seeing disciples multiply disciples. We saw the crisis come along in 2020 as we had this global event that's happened, and it's impacting lots of things, and it's caused a lot of crisis in a lot of different systems and structures that we have, and it's caused people to pull back into their home and pull back in a lot of different ways, socially and politically, and everything else has been crazy. And what this has really sharpened into is that relational networks are key for the gospel to be saturated into and to spread. Yes, Jesus models this idea of a person of peace strategy. You can find that in Luke chapter 10. But the way that we see the gospel spread is really through existing social networks. And as a person of peace is found within that existing social network, and then it expands through it. So at the end of the day, even person of peace strategies point towards oikos, or relational or social networks. And so one of the big lessons that I've seen in 2020 is the key of oikos and the key of being in and among oikos. So first of all, encouraging believers to be sharing with their oikos, or relational network, and then also seeing the strategy of how the gospel is going to move through relational networks. And so in 2020, Megan and I, my wife, we began to pray and see that we were not seeing traction and really multiplication happening among the lost in relational networks we were connected to. And as we began to pray about that, we felt like God began to say it's time to focus in on one people group, one specific demographic, and live among them. And so the strategy here being oikos, that in times of crisis and all these different things happen, people tend to move towards and pull back into their tribe. And so in these times of crisis, we've got to be finding ways to get the gospel into these tribes. And so for us, we said, we're going to find where there are the highest concentration of South Asians living in our city, Oklahoma City, and we're going to move and live among them. And we're going to begin to saturate that oikos with the gospel. And so we've done that. And right now we're meeting with a number of Nepali families, 4 or 5 right now that we're meeting with and sharing the gospel with, and inviting into Discovery Bible studies. And we're seeing that begin to grow. So the number 1 part B lesson that I've learned in 2020 that I want to share with you, this is kind of a cheat, I'm going to add in a 4th one, but is that hospitality is absolutely crucial to seeing disciples multiply disciples. When we read this passage in Luke 10 that talks about a person of peace, sometimes we can think that this is all just our Western style of knocking on the door, presenting the gospel at the door and then walking away. But Jesus exhorts the disciples here that when you find a house of peace, to go inside, to share a meal with them, to stay with them. There's a hospitality, a witness that is absolutely key for the gospel to take root and to grow within oikoses. So, number one, we learned in 2020 about the power of oikos, and 1B about the reality of hospitality. We've had people over for dinner. We did a Christmas party the other day where we invited Hindus to take on different roles in the Christmas story as a way for them to learn how to learn the gospel, not learn how to share, learn the gospel. And so by using hospitality as a strategy, and not just a part of what we do, just sort of willy-nilly, and if it happens, it happens, but really strategically saying, we want to plant ourselves in this relational network, and as persons of peace emerge, we're going to spend time with them. We're going to share dinner with them. We're going to begin to saturate in, and what that does is it builds trust for the gospel to begin to spread, and we might meet one person who is not that person of peace, but they might connect us to the person of peace. So oikos and hospitality are huge lessons that we've got to learn moving forward in these times of crisis. Number two, event training. And as I've talked with Chuck Wood about this, he's got a lot of great insights into this, and it's really helped to form my thinking and really sharpen it up, really. In March of 2020, we were not able to travel at that time. We had a trip scheduled and it got canceled like many other people. And so we took training online and we began to do event training in an online digital format, and the response was explosive. We saw so many people come through that training that are now a part of our leadership network that we are seeing really begin to see some multiplying fruit. It's been crazy and amazing. And so what I've learned from that is the role of event training is that there's this formalized structured event training that you can do and focus on especially the things that we're all called to from the Great Commission, which is to learn how to make disciples, how to share the gospel, how to pray, how to know Jesus. And so when we do these event trainings that have got these really basic rhythms and they're practitioner oriented, not knowledge oriented, these kinds of trainings can help us to filter for the doers. And at the end of the day, when it comes to seeing multiplication, we've got to have the doers. Those are going to do the word, not just hear the word. And event trainings, what I do when I'm doing those trainings and I'm partnering with a church or another group, is I want to serve them. I want to help them to learn the content of that we're training. But at the same time, I'm looking for those faithful few. And usually it's 1, 2, maybe 3 that are going to respond to this, to take this and begin to do it. And from that, we want to focus in on them because those are going to be your multipliers. So the key that I learned in 2020 was event training and its role in finding the doers. So we'll be doing more of that in the spring of 2021. And I see that being a trend moving forward that will be really effective for the gospel. Okay, and so number 3, and this was kind of in the first one that I shared, but number 3 lesson from 2020 is focus. And especially as those that are bivocational who work a full-time job and also working to multiply disciples, being focused on what our priorities and what to spend our time on and what to say no to really is absolutely essential. But as what happened in 2020 has continued to increase, that trend has increased, and I think into 2021 and beyond, it's going to just go insane. And that is all the distractions, all of the other things happening in our world, all the things vying for our time, vying to try to get us anxious and fearful. There's so much stuff out there. And so one of the hugest keys that we learned in 2020 was focus and helping our disciples, our few that are multiplying, identify focus. And now when I say focus, I mean identifying the critical key, highest value activities that are going to lead to multiplication and what to say no to. And so many times when you find leaders, they are the most skilled and capable people, and they oftentimes have a lot of other things going on in their life. And this is a good thing. You want to find those who are highly capable and pour deeply into them, but oftentimes they're going to fill their lives up with all this activity that doesn't actually profit or help them to grow and see multiplying disciples. And so what's key and critical is that we focus. And so focus is identifying those highest value activities. I want to point you to my most recent video to see what that can look like on a week-to-week basis. But it's absolutely critical that we not only identify focus, but schedule our priorities week to week. And then also within that, we want to share broadly as followers of Jesus. This is what Jesus did. He shared with everyone, but he also had a really specific focus and calling. And he would say no to the Gentiles because God had called him to the Jews. And then we see Paul specifically having this call to the Gentiles and saying no to other opportunities. And as we begin to share and as we begin to go, God's going to begin to give us a focus, and we've got to focus in on that. Now, the reason is for that is in a whole nother video. But when we want to see the gospel multiply, if the target is fulfilling the Great Commission and multiplication, if we go so broad and we share with so many different kinds of people and so many different cultures and all these different things, what ends up happening is it doesn't ever quite take root anywhere. And I think the trend I saw in 2020 is focus on the level of all the distractions, but also focus on the level of saying there are a lot of different dynamics and networks and ways that people are connected in the world. And if we don't take some time to focus in on a few, then we're going to sow so broadly and into so many different kinds of people that nothing's going to actually take root and begin to incubate within that culture or that relational network. So number 3 is focus on the level of avoiding distraction, but also focusing in on a specific people group or demographic. So I hope that's helpful for you guys, and I would encourage you to take some time, if you haven't already, to reflect on 2020, look forward to 2021, and set some goals, some very specific goals of what you will be doing to identify any barriers or obstacles to moving towards those goals so that you can take action on those obstacles. And then also, I'd love to hear your trends. What do you see as trending from 2020 that will continue into 2021 that we need to be thinking about as multipliers to see the gospel multiply until there is no place left, the Great Commission is accomplished, and Matthew 24:14 happens, that this gospel is preached to all people in all places. So I love you guys, and I hope that's helpful. I'll see you guys next time.